The National Sunday Law. Introduction. This pamphlet is a result of an argument made upon the National Sunday Bill introduced by Senator Blair in the 50th Congress. It is not, however, exactly the argument that was made before the Senate committee, as there were so many interruptions in the course of my speech that it was impossible to make a connected argument upon a single point. By these questions, etc., my argument was not only forced to take a wider range than was intended when I began to speak, but I was prevented from making the definite argument that I designed to present. I do not speak of these interruptions and counter-arguments by way of complaint, but only to explain why this pamphlet is issued. Nevertheless, it is a fact that while there were 18 speeches before mine, occupying 3 hours, in all of which together there were only 189 questions and counter-arguments by all the members of the committee who were present, I was interrupted by the chairman alone 169 times in 90 minutes, as may be seen by the official report of the hearing. 50th Congress, Second Session, Messages and Documents, number 43, pages 73 to 102. National Sunday legislation is a matter of national interest. It is true that this particular Sunday rest bill did not become a law, the legislation having died with the expiration of the 50th Congress. It is also true that those who demanded, formulated, and promoted this legislation never slackened their efforts, and they have now, 1892, attained the grand object of their ambition. They have the national government fully committed to the whole course of religious legislation exposed in this argument. In the 52nd Congress First Session, the Sunday law advocates concentrated all their forces and their energies upon the point of securing the closing of the World's Fair on Sunday by act of Congress. They sent to Congress petitions backed up by the threats so overbearing that their threats were denounced on the floors of Congress as an abuse of the right of petition. The following is but a fair sample of these petitions. Resolved, that we do hereby pledge ourselves and each other that we will from time to time henceforth refuse to vote for or support for any office or position of trust any member of Congress, either senator or representative, who shall vote for any further aid of any kind for the World's Fair, except on conditions named in these resolutions. Nevertheless, arrogant and abusive of the right of petition as they were, they had their intended effect. Congress surrendered, and in spite of the Constitution, and in disregard of solemn oaths to maintain the Constitution, this legislation was enacted as religious legislation at the demand of the churches, and because they demanded it, that the legislation was religious and consciously and intentionally so, as clearly shown by all the proceedings. Senator Hawley, who was the chief advocate of the measure, said of it these words: "Everybody knows what the foundation is. It is founded in religious belief," and in advocating it, he regretted that he was not the most eloquent clergyman that he might do the subject justice. Upon this, he said, "I wish, Mr. President, that I were the most eloquent clergyman, the most eloquent of those staunch old sturdy divines who have honored American citizenship as well as American Christianity, that I might give something more than this feeble expression of my belief in the serious importance of this vote. But I can quote a few words, only a few out of the many." Then, to make up what he himself lacked in this line, he quoted from letters from Archbishop Ireland, Archbishop Gross, and Archbishop Riordan of the Catholic Church, and from the bishops of the Protestant Episcopal Church, and then in another speech the next day further supported this by citing all the bishops of the Methodist Episcopal Church, both North and South. Senator Pfeffer said flatly, "Today we are engaged in a theological discussion concerning the observance of the first day of the week. So entirely was the discussion theological that the chaplain of the Senate, in reporting it to the New York Independent, July 28, 1892, said, "During this debate, you might have imagined yourself in a general council or assembly or synod or conference, so pronounced was one senator after another. That it was done distinctly and positively at the demand and under the threats of the churches is equally clear. Senator Hiscock, who was second only to Senator Hawley in his advocacy of the measure, said, 'If I had charge of this amendment in the interest of the Columbian Exposition, I would write the provision for the closure in any form that the religious sentiment of the country demands, and not stand here hesitating and quibbling about it, rather than let the public sentiment against the exposition being opened on Sunday be reinforced by the opposition in the other house against any legislation of this kind in the interest of the exposition. I say to the junior senator from Illinois, Mr. Palmer, he had better yield to this sentiment and not let it go out to the country that there is the slightest doubt that if this money is appropriated, the exposition will be closed on Sunday. If I were interested in the measure, as I might be interested if it were located in my own state, I should make the closure provision satisfactory to those petitioners who have memorialized us against the desecration of the Lord's Day. By taking the 13 million people who, according to the census of 1890, are church members in the United States, and then adding to these attendants, associates, and sympathizers who have a profound respect for the church, whether they believe it or not, Senator Hawley succeeded in creating from 45 to 50 millions of the people of this country who have more or less religious profession or sympathy. Upon this, he made the following argument: there is no use in endeavoring to escape responsibility. If the Senate today decides that it will not close that exhibition on Sunday, the exhibition will be opened on that day, and you will have offended more than 40 million of people, seriously and solemnly offended them. No wise statesman or monarch of modern times, no satrap of Rome, would have thought it wise to fly in the face of profound conviction of the people he governed, no matter if he thought it a profound error. It is not wise statesmanship to do it. Now, if gentlemen repudiate this, if they desire to reject it, if they deny that this is in the true sense of the word a religious nation, I should like to see the disclaimer put in white and black and proposed by the Congress of the United States. Write it. How would you write it? Word it if you dare. Advocate it if you dare. How many who voted for it would ever come back here again? None, I hope. You endanger yourselves by opposing it. Upon these and other evidences which he had obtained, Reverend H. George, a national reformer from way back, and who had spent the whole session at Washington as an avowed Christian lobbyist, declared in his speech in Paterson, New Jersey, August 7, 1892, "I have learned that we hold the United States Senate in our hands, and in reply to the proposition of the Sunday Closing Act might be repealed at the next session," he declared. "It cannot be repealed. We mean to maintain it at the point of the bayonet." And another one of the same kind of preachers, in a sermon in Pittsburgh, July 7, 1892, said that the church has weight with great political or governing bodies, has been demonstrated most effectually in the late World's Fair matter, when the United States Senate, the highest body in the country, listened to the voice of religion and passed the World's Fair $5 million appropriation bill with the church instituted proviso that the gates of the great exposition should be opened upon Sunday. That grand good fact suggests to the Christian mind that if this may be done, so may other equally needful measures. The church is gaining power continually, and its voice will be heard in the future much oftener than in the past. These facts and evidences plainly show that in this legislation the government of the United States has been handed over bodily to the churches, that the churches know it, and that henceforth the government is to be used by the combined churches as a tool by which they will execute upon all their arbitrary will. These evidences also demonstrate that a number of points made in my argument before the Senate Committee in 1888 have now been met to the full, and that therefore those statements were not made at random and without knowledge. This is not only true of these statements, but it is equally true of the other statements which remain. These too will yet be met to the full in the progress of this great evil of religious legislation now so positively and so fully entered upon. For in addition to this legislation and in advance of it, the Supreme Court of the United States rendered a decision February 29, 1892, in which the country unanimously declared this to be a religious people and a Christian nation, and so accomplished all that was intended to be accomplished in the religious amendment to the Constitution proposed by Senator Blair and cited on pages 96 and 97 of this discussion. The scope that was given to the subject by questions asked of me by the Senate Committee has opened the way for a somewhat exhaustive treatment of the subject. These questions being raised by United States senators, men of national affairs, show that a wider circulation of this matter is not out of place. The subject is worthy of the careful attention of the whole American people. In enlarging as I have upon the matter presented in the original hearing, the meaning or intention of any statement has not been changed in the slightest degree. The argument is submitted. The scope that was given to the subject by questions asked of me by the Senate Committee has opened the way for a somewhat exhausted treatment of the subject. These questions being raised by United States senators, men of national affairs, show that a wider circulation of this matter is not out of place. The subject is worthy of the careful attention of the whole American people. In enlarging as I have upon the matter presented in the original hearing, the meaning or intention of any statement has not been changed in the slightest degree. The argument is submitted to the American people with the earnest hope that they will give thoughtful consideration to the principles involved. The positions taken will bear the severest test of every form of just criticisms. Alonzo T. Jones.